16 days of activism against gender-based violence, and we thought it was wise for us to have discussions surrounding it. And today we have our guest who will be helping us talk about this particular matter in a legal sense. So stick with us wherever you are to be able to get to be able to understand this particular conversation. And across the globe, 1 in 3 women experience violence simply because of her gender. It is a crisis that transcends boundaries, cultures, and communities, shattering lives and silencing voices. But what does the law say? What protections are in place? Are the justice systems equipped to combat the pervasive issue? Today we break it down from legislative framework to courtroom battles. We are uncovering the legal pathways to justice and the gaps that still leave many vulnerable. Joining me this morning is Wakili Job Musembi, an advocate, and together we will explore how the law can be both a shield and a sword in the fight against the devastating epidemic. Stay tuned to have this particular conversation because it's something you definitely don't want to miss. And 22047 is the short SMS code. The hashtag on X is TV47 Morning Cafe. You can also find us on our socials at TV47 News KE, on Twitter, TV47 Kenya on Facebook, and also you can tag me on X as at OJ Samsons. Call in live on 0795045864 and also WhatsApp us on 0793267279. Of course, those particular contact numbers will be at the bottom of your screen. If you're unable to catch us through on terrestrial, or if you're traveling, or if you're any other place that you cannot access a television, we are streaming live across our digital platforms on TV47 Kenya on Facebook and on YouTube, and also on our website at www.tv47.digital. My name is Samson Jura. Job.
Yes.
Lovely you this morning on set.
Thank you so much.
Your time is greatly appreciated as we embark on discussing matters gender-based violence. Today is day 2 of activism against gender-based violence. First, what are some of the common myths and misconceptions about gender-based violence, and how would you dispel some of them?
Yes, one of the myths that is common, especially in the African context, is that men cannot be victims of gender-based violence, and also that husbands have the right to punish their wives as if they were children. That is to say, to punish them physically through beating them. That's the other myth, despite that women are adults and human beings with the dignity. Yes, and so the law views both men and women equally. The law does not place a woman below a man, and also the law does not deem a man incapable of being the victim of gender-based violence. So men cannot undertake to discipline their wives through punishment or physical violence as if they were children. And also, men can also run to the law for protection.
Right.
Yes.
Now, I'll just try to help our viewers understand that we do have forms of gender-based violence, and they are, just to mention a few, we have physical violence, which is any act which causes physical harm as a result of unlawful physical force. Physical violence can take the form of, among others, serious and minor assault and deprivation of liberty and manslaughter. We also have sexual violence, any sexual act performed on an individual without their consent. Sexual violence can take the form of rape or sexual assault. And also we have psychological violence, any act which causes physical harm to an individual. Psychological violence can take the form of, for example, coercion, defamation, verbal insult, and harassment. And this usually most of the time happens on the online spaces. And also we have economic violence, any act or behavior which causes economic harm to an individual. Economic violence can take the form of, for example, property damage, restricting access to financial resources, education, or the labor market, or to comply with economic responsibilities such as alimony. Of course, this is for people who are who have divorced. Isn't that so? Now, Wakili, why is it important to address GBV in today's society?
Yes, it's important to address gender-based violence for 2 reasons. One is that Kenya is a signatory to very many international conventions which protect human beings. The most important is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which provides for, among other things, freedom from violence, physical violence, protection of human life, freedom from slavery and exploitation, and the right to human dignity. The second reason why it's important to address this is because Kenya has a constitution which we promulgated in 2010 and which provides for the right to human dignity for everyone, freedom from torture, freedom, the sanctity of human life. And so it is important to ensure that everyone enjoys the protections under the Constitution. Yes.
Now, as someone who is in the legal profession and in the legal sector as it is, are the current laws and policies that we currently have in place sufficient to address GBV? And if not, what do you think should be done so that we are able to at least mitigate some of these cases, if not completely eradicate them?
I believe that in terms of the law, there are adequate laws. Kenya has moved many steps forward in terms of enacting legislation to tackle the gender-based violence. One is, there is the Penal Code. Penal Code provides for a very wide array of offenses that are committed against people, not necessarily gender-based violence, but they can still be used to tackle gender-based violence. Things like assault, things like murder, things like attempted murder, things like aggravated assault. All this, they may not necessarily be gender-based specifically, but they can be used to tackle gender-based violence. In Kenya, we also have what we call the Sexual Offences Act, which was enacted in 2006. The Sexual Offences Act has done a lot, actually. It has been a very instrumental act. Many people have been jailed for defilement, for rape, for inappropriate sexual conduct, sexual assault. And so the Sexual Offences Act and it also has very strict or very harsh penalties or sentences or terms of imprisonment if you are found guilty. In 2015, Kenya enacted an act of parliament called the Protection Against Domestic Violence Act, 2015, which is a very instrumental act. The only problem is that this act has not been publicized. There's a lot that needs to be done in terms of training. First, training of the police officers. Second, training of the community, the people. And I would also advise training of the civic society. That is the NGOs, the community-based organizations, because these are the people that work with people on the ground to raise awareness and also to sometimes push for people who are victims of gender-based violence. Yes.
Now, I would just like to read to our viewers some of the statistics that we have according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics that did state, it is a 2022 report, and it does state that over 40% of women aged between 15 to 49 years have experienced physical violence and 14% have experienced sexual violence. Now, in regard to this, and of course, you know, the number has been increasing. Even the United Nations did state that in 2023 the number was much higher, and we've seen what has been happening in the country for the last 6 months or so. So having this in mind, would you say that the law enforcement and the judiciary, the judicial systems in the country is effective in dealing GBV cases?
No. I believe that the police are not doing enough to address gender-based violence. The police are still, I believe, either not well trained about gender-based violence. Two, the corruption in the police system is a main problem that is derailing the fight against gender-based violence, because it is more often than not police will refuse to investigate issues of gender-based violence until they are paid, until they are given some inducement to do their work. But apart from that, there is what I call cultural reasons, where people still think that gender-based violence can be dealt with in the homes, and police will refuse to act upon reports of gender-based violence because they think that this is something that the complainant can sort with their spouse, can sort at home, can be taken to the elders instead of taking action. And more often than not, we have seen where someone goes to report the police refuse to take action, the person goes back home and they are killed. So that is the main issue, I believe. The judiciary is doing their best, but the judiciary can only take action once the police have arrested people and begun prosecution. So the judiciary cannot be put to blame for this, because the cases should be coming to them. And I believe that the judiciary we read in very many cases, the judiciary is sentencing these people, finding them guilty, sentencing them to long terms in prison. So I believe that there is need for police to be trained. There's need for police to also change their mindset about domestic violence, about gender-based violence. Yes.
And given that you've said that, as someone in the legal space, are there things that are being done to ensure that the police get the proper training in regard to handling matters gender-based violence at the moment?
Now, the Protection Against Domestic Violence Act obligates the Inspector General to first train the police to ensure that the police are sensitized on domestic violence. And the new act, the 2015 Act, and the police are trained. But apart from that, the Act also requires the police to take a swift and prompt action in investigating and bringing the offenders to book. I'm not sure about any programs that the police have put in place, or the Inspector General has put in place. I would like to hear from them. Would like to know from the police side or from their side what programs have they put in place to train the police? What policies have they put in place to ensure that cases of gender-based violence are dealt with promptly, swiftly, and with seriousness that they deserve? Like other cases, how they will take, for example, terrorism. Yes.
And coming back still to the judicial arm of government, which also has you members of the bar in there, what have they done also to sensitize the community to be able to understand the ins and outs about gender-based violence?
Yes, the legal profession. First, there is an organization of the Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA, which does a lot in terms of sensitizing the community and also taking up individual cases of gender-based violence. Yes, the legal community as well. There are very many members of the bar who work for NGOs and civil organizations that address issues of gender-based violence. The judges and magistrates are being trained on issues of domestic violence. In fact, the Chief Justice around 2 years ago established a court, a specialized court, to handle gender-based violence cases. So there's a lot on the part of the judiciary that is happening, on the part of the legal profession that is happening to not only sensitize, but also to deal with this issue of domestic violence. Yes.
What about schools? Have you reached out to schools to schools administrations also to be able to start with people while they're young, to be able to understand the laws surrounding gender-based violence?
Yes. It would also be important to note that when you're still in school, part of the curriculum entails gender-based violence issues. When we study criminal law, for example, one of the things we study in school is Sexual Offences Act, which I've said is a very instrumental act dealing with gender-based violence. Now there is the issue of domestic violence, now the Protection Against Domestic Violence Act, which is also being taught in schools. And apart from the curriculum, we also have events where students in schools, not only in the legal people who are studying law, but also general university students are being incorporated in this sensitization events, these walks. We have walks in schools. We have seminars or conferences where this is an issue. I understand Amnesty International, an NGO, does a lot of university outreach on human rights issues, among them being domestic violence and gender-based violence. Yes.
Don't you think it's also proper to also have to go as low as secondary schools, even upper primary schools?
Yeah, it is important. It is important, especially because these children grow up in these families where they observe gender-based violence and domestic violence on a daily occurrence, and sometimes even the children themselves are victims of domestic violence or gender-based violence. It is important for the government to cascade this sensitization down to the primary school, to the secondary school level, so that we have a change of mindset and a cultural shift from a situation where we have people grow up believing that gender-based violence is normal and is acceptable, to where it is not tolerated in the society. And I believe it's good that it begins from a young age, so that these children understand that what they may be observing at home, what they may be observing in the society is not normal. Yes.
Now, I would like to know, what challenges do gender-based violence survivors get when they're trying to access justice? Because clearly, with what is happening in the country, some of these cases that we've heard of femicides are of repeat offenders. People and also we have statistics that say that most of these femicide cases happen from spouses, that is husband and wife, and even boyfriends. The biggest percentage of this comes from that, and you might find these people have stayed together for a very long time. So it means it's something that has been happening to the and then the ultimate end is of course the biggest price that anyone can pay, that is untimely death. So what are some of the challenges and how can they be addressed?
The first challenge is lack of awareness. Most of these victims of domestic violence do not know what recourse they have in law, and because of that, they stay in abusive relationships, thinking it's normal. Sometimes they think it's kuvumilia. Apart from lack of awareness, there is the society itself condoning or tolerating domestic violence and abuse, especially the religious organizations such as the church, the clergy, both Christians and Muslims, where women are told to just stay. Don't leave an abusive husband. You need to suffer in silence. The other thing is shame. There's shame in speaking out. Most victims as well don't want people to know what's going on, so they would rather hide it and cover it to protect their families and themselves from the shame that would arise if they went to the police or if they spoke against it. So there's the shame as well. The other one is culture. Now our tribal cultures, our tribal inclinations, where we have been conditioned to think it's normal. It's normal to be beaten. If you are a wife, it's normal to be beaten by your husband. You're just being disciplined. So when they speak out, you will find even fellow women telling them, you must be the one doing something wrong. Don't leave the marriage. You need to be a good wife. So there's that cultural. And then lastly, what I have kept saying here is lack of promptness in addressing these issues when they report to the police, when they go to the courts. So the courts and the police, the more they take their time in addressing these issues, the more these victims are in danger. Yet the law has provided for reliefs for them, like a protection order, barring the people who are abusing them from coming near them, near to them. If the police will take action promptly, if they will actually arrest people who violate these laws, they would save these victims before something fatal happens to them. And I think that's the most important, lack of action being taken. When you look at other jurisdictions, you complain, an investigation is done very fast, they establish that there are grounds for a restraining order. A restraining order is given. And once someone violates the restraining order, they're arrested. If that can be put in place, I think we will cut by half these cases that we hear. Yeah.
Now, in 2020, the coronavirus pandemic greatly exacerbated this crisis that we already have, because we heard of cases whereby family members were sexually violated their kin. Some even children of a very young age that you'd tend to wonder, why would someone at that level of thinking would be able to do something so heinous. Now, the government did put up a mechanism that was a Kenya national toll-free number helpline, where some people who are going through gender-based violence could be able to get some assistance. That is calling the hotline number that was 1195 in case of in case you find yourself in that situation. Now, aside from this toll-free helpline that we had, and I want to believe it is still operational until now, what other tools and mechanisms are there that are at the disposal of the public to be able to help mitigate gender-based violence?
One is we need to employ the use of the provincial administration, which is still there, the chiefs, because the chiefs and the assistant chiefs and the headmen, the village headmen, they are at the lowest level. If going to the police is difficult, it's important that these issues of gender-based violence are reported immediately to the nearest provincial administration officers, that is the chiefs. Because maybe this toll-free number, people could have forgotten about it but no one has forgotten about their chief who's near them. And when you talk about gender-based violence, it also includes things like female genital mutilation. It involves things like being sexual exploitation, or more of slavery, where children, underage children, even grown-ups are taken to are trafficked for sexual exploitation, sexual trafficking. And so some of these things, if reported to the national administration, word reaches out there, and I'm sure the chiefs are well trained on how to contact the police and have these perpetrators arrested. So it doesn't have to be the police, because I understand that sometimes the police stations are far, especially in these remote areas. But most of the times the chiefs are near the people. So that is one of the tools that can be used. The other tool is we need to explore using the community-based organizations and the national NGOs and the NGOs because they also work with the people at that level. And most of these NGOs especially, they are targeted towards helping women. And if reports are made to them, they will easily escalate the information to the relevant authorities. Yes.
Well, it is day 2 of the 16 days of activism against the gender-based violence, an initiative. This did be a kickstart yesterday, that was Monday on the 25th, and is scheduled to go until the 10th of December 2024. Of course, you can call in on the number 0795045864 to share your thoughts and ask your questions to Wakili here in regards to the law, what the law says about gender-based violence. And also, you can also WhatsApp us on 0793267279. That those particular contact numbers are at the bottom of your screen. The hashtag on X is Morning Cafe. TV47 News KE is the handle on X. You can also tag me as at OJ Samson. Now let's talk about technology.
Yes.
How can technology help in fighting of GBV? Because we have also seen it also helps, aside from helping, there is also the negative impact which it has led to some people being violated, especially women in the online spaces. Yeah.
Yes, technology is a double-edged sword. It can be used to fight gender-based violence, and it has. The good thing about technology is that it helps prevent the secrecy that is usually associated with most of these gender-based violence offenses. So most of these gender-based violence offenses thrive when there is lack of information. So you find cases where men are or these perpetrators, they keep intimidating their partners, telling them that no one will hear, no one will know. I will keep beating you and no one will listen to you. But technology helps word move around. You can use the hashtags on Twitter. TikTok is doing an amazing job. So I would advise that we keep using technology to put word out there. I like a certain activist who has been fighting gender-based violence on Facebook. Is it Usikimye? There's a lady who, I think it's Usikimye, who runs Usikimye, and she puts word out there, and action is being taken. Because, you know, sometimes when there is a lot of outcry, public outcry, especially fueled by technology, these police who don't want to take action because of male chauvinism and tribal prejudices, they will have to take action because people are talking. Yes, technology will help the government also to take action. You've seen the president has already taken action himself because of the public outcry. So technology is good. It helps victims also have a word.
All right, so just hold on to that. I'm being informed that we are due for a break. So let's take that break and then we'll be back with the conversation on gender-based violence. See you in a bit.
Vile unavyojua watoto wengi sana hawana namna. Mimi ningependelea watoto wasome.
I'm here to stress on education. At the same time, let us actually do any kind of sport that we are doing. Sport speaks the best language to everybody.
Tunataka tutafute talents. Zile raw talents kutoka kule nyumbani mashinani mahali tuko leo.
Hizi mbio za Chepsaita, like all other sports, zinaleta watu pamoja We want to use this event to uplift the lives of the community.
Anafurahia hii mchezo sana. Hata sikaange naambianga watu tuende Jabsaita.
Wanafunzi wakimbie ili wakuze talanta ya mbio ama kuhimiza tena elimu.
This is the place to be. Hapa ndipo mahali wanastahili kuwa tarehe 7. Wale watoto walikimbia last year, wamekimbia mpaka wamefuka mipaka zetu za Kenya.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism, how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m.
Based violence, as I had mentioned earlier, it is day 2 of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, which commenced yesterday on Monday, the 25th, and will go up to December the 10th, 2024. And with me in studio is Job Musembi, an advocate who is helping us dissect the issues, the legalese surrounding gender-based violence. Now, before we went for that short break, Wakili, we were talking about the evils and the benefits of technology in the fight against gender-based violence. We've seen women shamed, talked badly about, insulted, and this is something that is on technology. So how can we at least try, because we don't want to risk censorship, because not many people would want that, because social media spaces, just as they are being used to spread the word about the fight against gender-based violence, they are also used by perpetrators. So how can we try to strike to find a balance? Of course, in a legal way, of course.
Yes, yes. Technology in the social media space, there's a risk of censorship and limiting free speech. Mm-hmm. However, there is need for the social media companies mm-hmm. and also for the regulators, the Communication Authority mm-hmm. of Kenya, to rein in on people who promote hate speech mm-hmm. on social media. There is need for one to provide a reporting mechanism where, and Kenyans also need to take advantage of this reporting mechanism. People who keep publishing hate speech need to be reported to social media companies, and most social media companies actually have a mechanism for reporting. You can report hate speech, you can report content that promotes gender-based violence, mm-hmm. that promotes domestic violence. You can report it on Twitter. I've seen it on TikTok. I've seen it on Facebook. Mm-hmm. most of these social media platforms also now have artificial intelligence, which can detect some of this hateful content, this insightful content. They detect specific words, they detect specific phrases, and automatically block them or shut them. So it is important for the Communication Authority of Kenya to also be more vigilant. I think they need to establish, if it's not there already, a unit that monitors social media activity. However, again, we need to clearly define what is wrong, what is wrong to say, because of late there has been a rise in what is known as the manosphere, and there are bloggers, there are vloggers who have come up with content that is trying to educate the boy child, and some of it may cross the line. So it is important for the court, the government to be vigilant and ensure that none of this content crosses the line to incitement against women. Yes.
All right, it's a good thing you've mentioned men, because I wanted to read a survey here that was conducted by the National Gender and Equality Commission, NGEC, which found out that 69.7% of GBV survivors are men. A similar proportion of men aged between 15 to 49 years, that is 44% according to that report, have been experiencing violence since the age of 15, but fewer than 12% have experienced it in their adult life. And of course, still on that particular report, in that survey that was conducted, men in Kisumu slums are the most common forms of violence against men were emotional, at 47.5%. Economic violence was at 23.8%, and sexual violence was at 16.5%, and physical violence was the least common at 12.2%. Of course, it goes, this we would say it is given that women are more victims of physical assault when it comes to gender-based violence. Now, given that we've had these statistics, after you've had this type of statistics, and you've mentioned about manosphere and the stigma that goes around when a man has been violated in whichever way or form, so how can men and boys be involved in the fight against gender-based violence?
Yes, men need to be told, one, we need to train our boys and our men to accept that there's nothing shameful in acknowledging that you have been a victim of gender-based violence. And some of this gender-based violence can actually be perpetrated by fellow men. You had of cases where men are sodomizing young boys, men are sodomizing teenage boys, and sometimes it's very easy for the boy to cower and fail to report it. So there's nothing shameful in acknowledging that this is happening, and also but also sometimes this gender-based violence is perpetrated by women. Either they are older women, or these are women who have financial strength over the man, and so they keep abusing the man. And it's important not only for the victims to be for there to be sensitization among the victims, but also among the police, because sometimes the police, they will laugh off when they hear the report is coming from a man, and tell the man, you go and be a strong man. Why did you allow yourself to get into this position? It's important that the authorities are sensitized that even men need to be protected. And then lastly, we need to also train our men to treat women as as human beings, as equal beings, and not as lower or second-class citizens. To treat our women as our mothers and as our sisters. With that understanding, I believe most of this can really be dealt with. And some of these manosphere spaces that I have logged into, they actually are doing well to educate men. Men are being now told that if a woman rejects you, just leave her. I like the emphasis in the manosphere of how to handle rejection. Yes, once you've been rejected, you don't have to kill a woman. You don't have to beat up a woman. There are other women there that you can pursue. So when one rejects you, move on and pursue another woman. You don't have to resort to violence. And I think we can take advantage of the manosphere to educate men to understand that these emotional reactions that sometimes men have in relationships where they end up harming their partners have consequences with the government. You will be arrested, you will be imprisoned, your life will be shattered. So learn how to handle rejection, learn how to handle disappointment in a relationship without resorting to violence. Yes.
And how do factors such as poverty and lack of education and perhaps even say systematic discrimination exacerbate gender-based violence in the communities?
Yes, poverty and marginalization, they definitely exacerbate gender-based violence. In what ways? One, due to diminished or few resources in the community, mostly the stronger gender or the stronger person will want to use their strength to take all the scarce resources for themselves. But also, it will result in a case where the weaker person has to beg, and by begging I mean they have to allow themselves to be abused so that they can have access to these few resources. And that's how we see people resorting to prostitution, people resorting to even underage prostitution, so that they can even have access. We've seen sad stories of girls sleeping with men so that they can afford to buy sanitary towels because of the scarcity in resources. So people allow themselves to be abused to be able to access resources. And so it's important for the government, for civil society to step in and address this by first making those basic necessities available to people. If that is first made available to them, this struggle for survival, where people remain silent on sexual violence or gender-based violence, will be greatly reduced. But also with poverty also comes a lack of access to education. Yes, where there's lack of access to education, some of this gender-based violence persists in uneducated groups, because people don't know first that these are crimes. People do not have an understanding of human rights where there's lack of education. So it's important for the government to be intentional, deliberate about ensuring that these marginalized societies, these impoverished communities access education, because with education they're able to understand issues of human rights, to understand issues of equality, and greatly reduce this gender-based violence. Yes.
Now, to educate our viewers, what is the process like for someone when they want to report a gender-based violence case and to see that she has been adjudicated till the end until that particular person gets justice?
Yes, it depends with the kind of offense, but mostly domestic violence. The domestic violence captures a wide array of offenses. Largely is go to the police. Yes. So depending on the offense, Sometimes it's an offense where assault has happened. You will, when you report to the police will refer you for medical examination, and you will obtain what you call a P3 form. If it was rape or defilement, you will obtain a post-rape report. So you report to the police, depending on what has happened, you go for medical examination, and then the police will do their investigation and arrest the perpetrator. And the perpetrator will be arraigned in court. That is the criminal aspect of it. But now, the Protection Against Domestic Violence Act has provided another procedure, apart from the criminal route, where while the criminal route is pending, while the criminal case is pending after the perpetrator has been arraigned in court, the victim or the complainant can file simultaneously a separate application to the court for a protection order. So there's something we call a protection order that the courts are granting. So you file a separate case in court, and this case you seek for what you call a protection order, especially if the perpetrator is still harassing you. And harassment right now under the Protection Against Domestic Violence Act has been defined to include what in common parlance we call stalking. Yes. So especially if you are a victim of stalking, the perpetrator is coming to your workplace, is following you after work, is hanging around your home, keeps sending you messages, keeps calling you after you've told them you don't want to hear from them, and they keep changing their numbers and call you even after you've blocked them using the numbers that you know. You can rush to court and obtain what you call a protection order. Once you have a protection order, the protection order, you serve it upon the perpetrator. The protection order is basically an order that stops that person from doing what they're doing. If they violate the protection order, you can go back to the police, and the police have a duty to arrest them, because violating a protection order is a criminal offense. So you can get a protection order in the interim, pending the case being heard, and then the court can hear the case to finality and give its final judgment. So that's the procedure.
And I'm very curious, does psychological violence also go through the same process?
Yes. So with psychological violence, where there is no physical violence, it's emotional abuse. So it depends with a number of things, especially if you're still living together. You know, if you're still living together and there's emotional violence or psychological violence, the law, you can still go to court, especially if you don't have another place you can go to live. That's the problem. You don't have another home. If you have another home, you can leave the home. If you can afford, another shelter, you can leave the home. But if you can't, the law provides for a procedure. You still go to court and apply for an order. Now, this is not necessarily a protection order. It's an order directing the perpetrator to vacate the house, especially if you as the victim is the one who is economically disadvantaged compared to the perpetrator. So the perpetrator is ordered to vacate the home. You are left in the home, so that the abuse is no longer persistent. But you know, now with that, the problem with that is that sometimes it may provoke the perpetrator to now resort to physical violence. Yes.
Now, since this particular epidemic started being highlighted on mainstream media, on social media, and all other platforms that people are plugged into, do you think the help-seeking patterns has changed in regards to gender-based violence among both men and women?
I think there has been there has been a change in attitude by the police. And right now, the police are more sensitive, more accepting of this and taking more action. But apart from that, as you've said, the help-seeking pattern could have changed. In what way? Right now, there has been a lot of organization and groups and a lot of social media. So people are now seeking help from activists and these groups that are present online, who help them report to the police. You know what sometimes the fight against gender-based violence is hampered by the fact that victims are afraid themselves to go to the police. So right now we are seeing a pattern where victims are going to these organizations, to these activists who help them and now report to the police on their behalf. And when you look under the Act, a third party can report gender-based violence right now. So also to encourage our viewers that if you suspect that your neighbor is going through domestic violence, under the law, you yourself, you can report. In fact, you can also apply for this protection order. If you feel that there's someone you know, but they're afraid themselves to report, you yourself, you can take up that. And that's what we are seeing right now. It is activists, it is women groups, it is NGOs that are doing the reporting on behalf of victims. Yes.
Right, I'm being informed that our time has completely run out. We have a few minutes, if not seconds. So what would be your final words in regards to this particular topic?
My final words is we should not be silent. We should not allow our cultural misconception about this issue cloud our judgment. Let us speak out. Let us, if you know someone who's a victim, do not be afraid to get them help. You can report on their behalf. Let us take it up as a national emergency. Let us take it up as a national issue. Don't leave it to the people who are victims. Yes, if you're afraid to report, you can report anonymously. I think those toll lines now allow people to report anonymously. Yes.
Thank you very much, Job Musembi, for giving us your time and to helping us understand the law in regard to matters gender-based violence. As we know, it is day 2 of the 16 days of gender-based violence activism against gender-based violence, an initiative that began on Monday, the 25th of November, and it will end on December, the 10th of December 2024. And of course, as Job has mentioned, it is your public health responsibility to ensure that you speak out in the event you see that a neighbor or someone that is close to you, your kin or kith, is undergoing gender-based violence, so that we can be able to eradicate some of these cases of femicide that we've seen have skyrocketed in the last couple of months, which of course brings a lot of grief and sadness and loss to families, friends and neighbors. And on that note, we'll be coming to we'll be bringing Morning Cafe to an end. Remember, you can continue with this particular conversation on our socials. That is at TV47 News KE on X, TV47 Kenya on Facebook, TV47 Kenya on Twitter, on Instagram, as well as on TikTok. You can also WhatsApp us on 0793267279. You can also tag me at OJ Samsons. Also, we have more content for you available on our website at www.tv47.digital. And with that, we call it a day. Good morning. My name is Samson Jura.